Hey, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to GNR Central. And today I want to talk about the time that actor Sean Penn actually stuck up for Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses for their song One in a Million. So this really happened back in 1989. It was like September, October 1989. There was all this controversy around One in a Million, and the New York Times had a writer named John Perellis. So he wrote an article not just about Guns N' Roses, but just about pop culture in general, and Guns N' Roses, of course, were mentioned in the article. So his article was titled Pop View, There's a New Sound in Pop Music, Bigotry. So I won't read the entire article because it's quite long, but if you guys want to read the full thing, I've included it down below. So the article starts out with "Has hatred become hip? From isolated spots in pop culture, racial and sexual prejudice have slithered back into the view. Andrew Dice Clay, a comedian whose Nassau Coliseum performance on Saturday sold out immediately, mixes dirty word jokes with vicious put-downs of women, homosexuals, blacks, and Japanese." Now, Dice opened, I think, one show for Guns N' Roses back during the Metallica tour, and he also did one, back in 2014. He's also claimed credit for the Guns N' Roses reunion. They also highlighted a sketch on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, where they basically invoked that baseball, the way it was meant to be played on real grass with no designated hitter and all white guys. The studio audience gasped, then tittered nervously. And they also said, in a recent Rolling Stone magazine cover story, Axl Rose of the heavy metal band Guns N' Roses, whose debut album sold 9 million copies, defends his song One in a Million. Then they mentioned the lyrics from the song. They also said, across the color line, the rap group Public Enemy fired, then rehired Richard Griffin, who is a minister of misinformation, said in a May interview with the Washington Times, "The Jews are wicked, and we can prove this." He went on to say that the Jews are responsible for a majority of wickedness that goes on across the globe, and Mr. Griffin was made the group's liaison to the black community and local youth programs, but no longer gives interviews. And in a statement announcing the rehiring, Public Enemy's leader, Carlton Ridenhour, said, "Please direct any further questions to Axl Rose." They also went on to say, meanwhile, numerous rappers, include homophobic asides in the course of an album. For example, Heavy D and the Boys, whose album Big Time recently reached #1 on the Billboard Black Music charts, boast with their rhymes, "You'll be happy as an F in jail." So actor Sean Penn saw this and basically responded to the article and called it a bunch of nonsense. So before I get to Sean Penn's article, there were some more mentions of Axl, and even Geffen Record had to comment on it. So they said Mr. Rose in his interview indicated that to him, racial epithets represent artistic freedom, a position echoed by his recording company, Geffen Records. So according to Bryn Breidenthal, Geffen Records' Director of Media and Artist Relations, she said there was a lot of discussion about One in a Million, and if it was totally a label decision, the decision probably would have been not to release it. But if you're going to start with censoring your artist, it's going to damage your relationship. There's always somebody who's going to release it, and if you've got an artist like Guns N' Roses, you want to keep the relationship with the company. And in the end, Geffen Records just does not support censorship of the artist's creative desires. Guns N' Roses have a lot of power because they've sold a lot of records, she added. But if they hadn't sold a lot of records, no one would have paid any attention to that song. Interestingly, Geffen also released Mr. Clay's album Dice, produced by its deaf American subsidiary. But the album was deemed so controversial that no Geffen information appears on the package, and Mr. Clay's next album is tentatively titled No Tolerance. So on September 24th, 1989, actor Sean Penn responded to the New York Times with an article titled "Bigotry in Pop, Pseudo-Liberal Hogwash?" He said, "Who is John Perellis and why is he writing pseudo-liberal hogwash for the New York Times Arts and Leisure section? His limp attack on the rock band Guns N' Roses, as well as performers Andrew Dice Clay and rap group Public Enemy, is the latest in a growing trend towards criticism for its own sake. Perellis is sharp and his experience as a journalist must be vast, hence his jabbing flurries culminate in quick defense from scrutiny upon his own work. He opens his indulgence with a question, has hatred become hip? From isolated spots in pop culture, racial and sexual prejudice have slithered back into the view. His use of the word isolated will protect him well from those who, like himself, feign to the foes of the generalization. As Perellis points out, recent incidents in New York City also finds hatred slithering back into view. Those instances were a lethal demonstration that what slithers back into view hides quietly, coiled before striking. Perellis refers to the kitchen of our cultural messages as a clean place being violated by the songs of Guns N' Roses. A cultural and governmental society whose heroes dress as clowns and whose clowns dress as heroes, is this man awake? Pareles is a liberal cliche in his reference to the triumphs of civil rights movement in the 60s as a fait accompli. Here he is writing for us all good-hearted white boys. We did our bit in the 60s, so leave us to our cozy jobs and don't remind us that the job is not done. Guns N' Roses' song 1 in a Million is like a Kappa photo of war. It's a no-holds-barred reminder that hatred, fear, and bigotry are as alive today as they were when America's media called for a war on domestic unrest, a finished cause. Perhaps the death of King led to ultimately boring and unsellable news about the world and not the news about itself. If artists are honest and their work is personal, its strength is in its ability to inspire thought and emotion, and a photo of reality can be harsh but unlikely biased. 1 in a Million is a brave song. The fear and anger of it are what Pareles condemns. Perhaps we need to see and hear more of it because our clean kitchen kills everything that is great in our country. So that does it for today's video, guys. Let me know if you remember that incident where there was this back and forth between the New York Times and Sean Penn. Let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys hadn't heard that story, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you love GNR as much as I do. Take care.